Hello, friend. Welcome, everyone, to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 2. It's called 402 Payment Required. I'm not going to lie, I forgot the naming system for this, and when I first looked at the title when I was watching on Prime and it popped up, I thought it was trying to tell me that my Prime membership had lapsed and I had to pay. I had to renew my details so that I could pay for the Prime.
That's quite funny.
And then I was like, oh no, it's just the stupid name of the episode. I thought it was going to be like an error message saying, no, we've not been able to charge you. You have to go and fill in your bank details again. I'm like, piss off.
I assume episode 4 is going to be like 404 not found, right?
Oh, it's going to be 404. I don't know if.
That's the standard 404 message, isn't it?
Yeah, but is payment required a standard 402 message?
No, but But 404 is probably the most well-known one.
Oh, it absolutely is.
So that's why I would say.
Oh, it is. And actually, 403 forbidden. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's familiar.
Yeah, that sounds like a normal one.
You get that one a fair bit.
Yeah, okay. All right. I guess 402 payment required is a real thing then. It probably is a real.
Forbidden, I think you get a lot when depending on your browser, on a modern browser, if you try and access a HTTP site instead of a HTTPS, your browser may just be like, hey, no, this is unsecure. So it'll give you a 403.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's the title. We start the episode with Price doing some voiceover, doing some backstory, filling in.
Some exposition.
Over news footage of various things and a few Forrest Gump style insertions of Zhang into various world leader clips. we see
they
Zhang...
did this with, it was Obama they did it with at one season, right?
Well, no, that was different because Obama actually said things. He actually said dialogue.
Oh yeah, that was it. They did that.
Yeah, but it wasn't this. No, this is different. This is Putin Zhang in the footage shaking hands with Putin and the Queen and.
Yeah.
But I think the Queen was playing golf. I thought she was like swinging a club.
No, she was like knighting him.
She was knighting him, that's what it was.
It was the sword, yeah.
Ah, right. I just remember her swinging something metal. I was like...
it was the sword on the shoulders.
Yeah. That makes more sense. That makes more sense than her just having a putter in her office.
Hey, I wouldn't put it past old Liz.
Just got a putter. And it starts with the Berlin Wall coming down and how this was a time of opportunity. Everything was changing. The world was changing. And Minister Zhang got an idea. It was like we get like a young, presumably some sort of old clip they got a BD Wong when he was in his 20s.
Yeah, or just a bit of CG deep fake magic.
Maybe. I mean, they probably at least used reference photos of him. But
I will say that the fact that this is over like an old CRT kind of display is the visual style. That kind of covers up quite a bit.
It makes it easier. There was only actually one point with putting Zhang into the other footage where his face just looked a little bit off. Like it looked a little bit just
which bit
disconnected.
If you can remember, it doesn't matter.
Nah, it wasn't one with Putin. It was like one or two after Putin where it looked, his head just looked a little bit stuck on, and it looked fine the rest of the time. It was just that one little bit.
Yeah, most of it looked pretty good.
Yeah. So fair play. But we find out that he formed the Deus group. Now Deus here, I didn't actually know exactly. I got the gist of what it sounded like. It wasn't until later where I saw it written down, where I noticed the spelling and I think it's interesting because Deus in this case is Deus as in Deus ex machina, meaning that it's
as in God,
as in God, Latin for God. Yeah, that's Latin, right?
I would assume so.
So
it's always Latin
because Deus ex machina, if you don't know, is a God in the machine. Which often is used to talk about like AIs becoming self-aware and things like that, and that's the most common use of it these days. But yeah, so I thought that's notable. And again, we see him recruiting essentially world leaders all over the planet to be part of the Deus group, and Evil Core became this kind of front for them. This idea that okay, so they'd use terrorism, they used real life terror events on the screen and things like that, and sort of implied that Zhang was behind them. But the idea that the next big coup was going to be digital. It was going to be people using the internet and people signing in, and it specifically shows a montage of people like ticking the yes, I agree to these terms and conditions.
Yes, which obviously no one ever reads, and it's like, oh hey, you've just given over all your bank details to the internet.
Yes,
and all your everything about your life on social media.
So, and it's this idea that eventually at least Price became aware, if no one else, that ultimately this whole thing, like, Deus Group wasn't really the end goal. Zhang was kind of using them all for his project, his pet project as he calls it, which is this device that he is shipping to the Congo, this thing that he's been building towards for years. And Price even says that the others know about it and kind of laughed it off and thought, that's not going to be a thing. That's nothing. So again, they keep playing with this idea of what is this damn device?
And it makes it even more terrifying seeing, because we've always known he's had a lot of power, influence, and wealth. Yeah, we've seen that, but this kind of put it in perspective of a whole other scale. And he still doesn't give a shit about any of this. It's just about his project. That's pretty intense.
Which almost does this thing where it puts it in this real world setting of like all these world leaders. It makes a point of using all these, Castro and everyone else.
Yeah.
And it gets to the end of it, and it's like, but the idea that he thinks there's something more important, that this device, whatever he's doing, is more important. Like, it almost swings it around to almost convincing me that maybe it is something science fictiony, that he just genuinely believes he can do something bigger. Like, he has a higher power.
He is basically behind half the world at this point, if not more.
Like, if being that powerful isn't the end game, then what is the end game? What is beyond that? Like,
it's huge, is all it is, and I have no idea.
And it could be as simple as that this device will let him like maintain all this digital information and just make him powerful without needing everyone else. It cuts out all the other people. But
it's possible.
It could be that simple. But I mean, our mind does tend to wander and go further.
I don't want to rule anything out definitively in this show.
Aliens. Anyway, so eventually, of course, it comes into the scene that we're actually in the real world, and this has been Price explaining this to Elliot, and obviously by default, Mr. Robot as well. And it comes out, and he's in all safe. He's looking at Elliot's big board, the big web, and I noted that a lot of the shots in this of Price, he was literally in the middle of this big web behind him, and the light is it's dawn, so the light's very harsh and it's at a very low level, and. Yeah. It feels like he's literally been overpowered by this web around him. Visual was very clear in terms of what it was doing.
I did notice at the top of this it said Deus. I don't know, did Price add that on himself, or was that something that was there before that Elliot had stumbled across the name, just hadn't connected to anything?
I don't know. I would be inclined to think he added it, but they could swerve me otherwise. So yeah, Mr. Robot's still narrating. That's a big thing here in this episode. It's probably going to be a big deal the moment that Elliot talks to us again.
Finally talks to us, yeah.
Yeah. There's a funny bit later on. We'll get to that in the scene, but there's a funny bit later on with Mr. Robot narrating I really like.
Okay.
But yeah, he's still narrating and saying, "Hey, this is kind of weird. This is like our enemy, and he's the only reason why we're alive." And Price kind of says as much. He's like, "Hey, like, you're lucky I'm the one who was in charge of like dealing with that building and like taking care of people that were involved in it." And he's like, "Yeah, why don't you just kill me?" And he's asking questions of like, "Hey, can we? I want to break into the bank. I want to do this big heist, take all of White Rose's money. Can we get to this? And you must have a connection." Because as soon as he says like because what I liked about this is that when the big idea of like you can help us like comes into it. That's when it switches to Mr. Robot for the first time. Like, not counting the narration. It's Elliot talking to him, but as soon as the idea, it's like, it switches to Mr. Robot and says, "Hey, you can get us in. You'll have a connection." And it switches back to Elliot eventually when it becomes about the hard details of like, oh, I can get past this authentication, and I can worry about the hacking parts. And I mean, this has been true of their relationship and which parts they represent the whole time. But the idea that Mr. Robot is where the extreme ideas come from, and then Elliot's the sort of the raw, like, numbers and hacking of it.
He does the implementation.
Yeah. And this is where we get the name Susan Jacobs again. And we find out that she was the one who worked at E-Corp, whose job it was to kind of be a liaison, as it were, to the bank. Philip himself never really had access directly to the bank. No one else in the company did. It was just one person they appointed, which was her. It was Jacobs.
Makes sense.
And then he's like, and Elliot's like, "Well, hey, we need to get to her." And he's like, "It's not that easy, Mr. Alderson. She's been missing for months." And of course, thank you to the previously on, by the way, for reminding me of her name, because I would have been maybe confused otherwise. This is the woman that Darlene killed.
To be fair, even if you didn't catch that in the previous one, I think the episode does a good job of bringing you up to speed on that pretty quickly when it, so you're not left in the dark for too long.
Oh, sure, yeah. By the time you see her photo later on the phone, yeah, I mean, it's clear who we're talking about.
Yeah.
But in this scene, though, immediately it's like, oh, we know why she's missing. We know exactly why she's missing, and I thought that was a neat little beat there in the scene. So yeah, and what's interesting is that he's just dead set against this. He's like, "Nah, I can't help you. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't." And it's Elliot is like, "White Rose killed your daughter," and this stops him dead in his tracks. And Elliot's like, "Yeah, I looked into you too. Like, I know things."
Why wouldn't he?
Yeah. And what's great about this is that he makes this plea to his morality. He's like, "You've been looking the other way for so long. Like, I think it's you're because what he says to Mr. Robot afterwards when Price leaves and Robot thinks that, hey, like, see, that's it, we get no help from him. Elliot's like, no, he's still in. We'd be dead if he didn't want to be fighting.
He's still in, and Mr. Robot's like, he literally just walked out.
Yeah, but this whole idea that he wouldn't have saved him if he didn't want to fight in some way, and the idea that Angela being his motivation to fight is very interesting because it's also Elliot's motivation to fight, and later on it's going to be partially Darlene's motivation to fight. Everyone's got a motivation to fight, and Angela's kind of at the center of all of it.
And it makes me feel like there's got to be a moment where the rug's pulled out from under them to do with Angela.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
If she's the key motivation bringing them together, there's got to be something that screws that up.
Yeah, and he obviously doesn't admit to any of this. He doesn't agree with Elliot, but he hesitates enough where you know that he is doubting himself. He does kind of want to fight back because he has that really morbid thing when he's leaving. He's like, the minute I agreed to work with White Rose, I knew I was a dead man walking, and for the record, so are you, kind of thing. So, like, being cynical as ever. So after this scene, because the scene ends with a phone call from Darlene, their mother has passed away. So we cut to her retirement home or wherever she was living, and again, I love the just the simple shot composition here, where it's on this woman who's talking about how great their mother is. Their mother was this this rock for her when her son or her father passed away or something like that, and it stays on her for a while. It pulls out from her, and it cuts to Darlene and Elliot, and they're standing at opposite sides of the frame. They're
completely uninterested.
They're not, because the mothers just, you expect them to be standing close, maybe even with their arms around each other or something, like affectionately, like grieving, and they're just in opposite ends of the frame, just looking like, huh?
It's the way they're stood so still as well and rigid.
And again, it's this harsh light coming from behind. It's not quite dawn anymore, obviously, but it's this harsh light that really is in this stark background. Oh dear. So yeah, they're looking through stuff. And because the woman's asking actually, like, about what to do, and Elliot says, "Oh, what do we do?" And she's explaining the rules. And Darlene just goes, "Donate everything without a thought. Just donate everything. We don't want to."
And she's just shocked. It's like, well, staff aren't actually allowed to do that. You have to kind of go through it all.
Yeah, have to label the things you want donated and whatnot. So they're looking through stuff, and Darlene takes a coat, and Elliot's like and Darlene tries to say, "Hey, like yesterday that whole thing with Angela and me thinking I saw her, like that was kind of crazy." And Elliot kind of just says, "Oh, we're cool, it's fine, whatever. Let's just get this done." Like he just wants to get out of there as quickly as possible. And the key detail, of course, is that he finds a yellow Walkman that used to belong to him, and I think Darlene says, "Rad, that's your old Walkman."
I think he opens it up and sees what's inside it.
He does.
Right?
He sees it. We don't get to see it. Not does she, but he does get to see what it is. And he
goes to chuck it out and donate it.
He shoves it in the box. Darlene goes and says, "No, I'll have it if you don't want it." Although I did note down that she said, "Why did Mum have that? Mum hated music." I thought that was a funny line.
Obviously makes a lot more sense later on.
And of course the scene ends with Darlene finding a safety deposit box account, a receipt or whatever, in this box. So that kind of sets up a big thing that they're going to be doing a little bit later. But then we cut to the FBI. We cut to Dom, who is sitting at the opposite end of a table of someone else, who we find out later is an Agent Horton. And they are looking at each other, and he's basically, this is the interview about Santiago, and he's like, "Hey, it's kind of weird that he disappeared, after deleting some camera footage. Did he ever act suspicious? What was he like with you guys in the squad and in the office, blah blah." And again, I want to note the camera work here. I want to note the framing and a couple of the things it was doing. The dead-on shots, because there was like two sets of shots essentially in this scene that it kind of flipped between. One pair of shots, again, sort of reversing between them, was looking at them dead on. And when it was looking at him, it was two small computer monitors on either side of him, right?
Yes.
And that was it. When it was looking at Dom, there was those same two small monitors, but there was also a big one in the middle that was kind of right around her head. And
yeah.
I think given where this scene goes, where she sort of gives this big lie, I don't know if it's just simply that the extra screen around her head is kind of representing that the story's fabricated, that there's a fake element to what she's saying to him.
The lie surrounded by truth.
Oh, I mean, it is, yeah, there's a lot of truth before. Because up until she actually says, you know, who he was a double agent for, it sounds like she's telling the truth about everything.
It does, and then you go, oh. But I mean, you know, it's that classic, you know, a lie is easier to believe if you surround it in, you know, as much truth as possible. It's the sense, okay, the two monitors are the truth because they're on his side as well.
Yeah.
And then the third one is, okay, the lie in the middle.
And the other bit of camera work that I really liked here is when it goes to the side, there's like profile shots dead on to the side. Again, it's a little bit different than what you normally see in filmmaking. Typically, there'll be an angle sort of looking at us, not quite at the camera, but looking more at us. Yeah. And this was like side-on profile shots for both of them looking at each other. But what was notable was how they were framed within that shot. Is that in both sides, they were very close to the what I'll refer to as the center edge. And but what I mean by that is that, you know, when she's looking at the right, she's looking at the right of the screen. So she's actually quite close to the right. Her nose is very close to that edge, and likewise, he's very close on that other side to his left.
Whereas traditionally, you do it more close to the middle or towards the other side.
Yeah, but the effect that has here is that despite the fact that they've got a 6-7 foot table between them, it always feels that they're actually really close together. It feels like they're right in each other's face almost all the time. And that's what makes this really effective, is that, like, despite the actual physical space, they feel like right in each other's face right now.
Yeah, it feels really personal.
Yeah, it feels really intensive. So
yeah,
really well done stuff. Yeah, and she gives this fake, you know, it's like this cartel. Yeah, I was working for this cartel, and I'm scared for my life and my family because this cartel might come after us. But of course, that's the fake part, which does actually take us straight to the taxidermy place, where the woman, who we now know as Janice. I mean, you probably heard that last episode, but I made a point of noting it down.
I think I even said her name was Janice last time.
Well, badge for you.
I'm taking the small point.
But what I thought was interesting here, again, symbolically, she's like preparing like a deer, like frame.
Is that what it was? Is it a deer?
I think it was a deer. For like an actual deer skin to go on it, and you know, she's sort of waxing it up as she's talking to Dom, but she's literally putting this like skin and fur of the deer over the head as she says, you know, keep your head straight or something like that. And again, this idea that it's almost like a puppet, right? She's literally
covering up the lie as well.
Oh, I know you can look at it that way, but I was thinking more like it's almost like Dom's now one of her subjects, right? And she's literally putting her fur on this subject as she's kind of like controlling Dom. I don't know. Obviously, it's not a literal puppet, but it kind of felt puppet-esque.
I get what you meant.
In that sense, but she's only calling to say like, hey, okay, the interview went well, and you know, I'm pretty sure that he bought it. What do you mean by pretty sure? Well, you know, like 99.9%, as sure as ever can be. And she like writes down the agent's name. It's like, okay, she's evil as shit. And it's worth mentioning, there's a whole conversation going on like the radio or whatever right now about the Manson family. So just to complete that, and then the scene ends with a really funny beat. It's a really dark funny beat, but this old woman comes in with her little dog, says, I want Charlie to be with me forever, and just like pulls out this carcass of a dog and just slaps it on the table. It just
lumps onto the table.
But my favourite part of this is the way Janice looks up at her as you hear the final part of this radio broadcast say, anyone, I think it's they're talking about other countries, like anyone who breaks the law gets their heads cut off or something like that. She's just like looking at her. Like, she's her angle's down, she's looking up at her. I don't know. The whole thing was just darkly very funny, and it
was very funny. Yeah,
I don't know what else to say about it.
Janice is a strangely funny character in the sense that the whole point of her is, okay, she's not the one you expect, yet she's terrifying. So it's got, you know, it's got that going for it.
Yeah, she's actually much scarier than Bobby Carnival was last season.
It's quite impressive because he was also pretty scary.
Yeah. Then we cut to the funeral home, and the Mr. Robot and Elliot are in the, you know, the main pews kind of area, and they're talking about well, Mr. Robot's trying to get him to open up and admit that he's feeling things. Basically, he's worried that he's bottling things up, and Elliot's like, "Oh, come on."
Elliot never does that, does he?
Yeah, and Elliot's like, "Nah, come on. Like, I'm more concerned about the fact that Waiter's going to kill me and Darlene, so I'm working on that. How about we get back to that?" And this is the part I was laughing at with the narration, because he narrates a little bit before this and then after. He's like, "Okay, I admit to us, I admit that didn't go so well." And then there's a pause, and he goes, "F you." So, I just love how aggressive he is with this. It's great.
Yeah, it's funny.
And then we cut to Darlene, who's in the back, and she's with the guy, to the funeral director or whoever, who's selling the coffins. She's looking through the catalog. The thing I wanted to note down here though is the background. I don't know if you noticed this very specific thing, is that there's 5 coffins in the background. 2 of them are closed and 3 of them are open. Now,
I did not notice that.
Now, I might be reading far too much into this, but I couldn't help but notice that in the scene we just had there with Mr. Robot and Elliot, that when Elliot said, "Oh, the White Rose is coming after us," he specifically said, "Me, you, and Darlene." So I don't know if the 3 open caskets just kind of represent those 3.
It could do, but begs the question:
Who are
the other 2?
Is one Angela? Is one?
One would be Angela, I would assume.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know who the 5th one is. Not who's as directly personal as.
Yeah. There's been other deaths for sure. I mean, maybe there's another reading this that I'm not quite getting, but I definitely noted down, because I was like, this is interesting. There's 3 open and 2 closed. I'm not letting that go by me. Oh, look, we've changed clothes, and Connor looks like a Bond villain or something now with his hair slicked back.
I got a haircut.
You got a haircut today.
That's why, yeah.
So my internet went out mid-recording, which is why this review is now a day later than it should be. So apologies for that, but not much we can do in those circumstances. So we're going to pick up right where we left off. I was talking about the 3 open coffins. I'll just add on at the end of this scene, Elliot just walks in whilst looking at his phone and says, cremation, cardboard coffin, cheapest urn. Just going with the theme of the episode, which is we don't really care about her mother because she was awful. But then at the train station, at the subway station, and this was a really tense scene actually, just because Elliot had Susan Jacobs on his phone. There was like a photo of her. Yeah. And like Darlene's sitting next to him, and at one point she grabs his phone, and she reveals later that she did notice it. But I was kind of waiting for it all to see. I was like, oh, is she going to like react,
say something? Yeah,
maybe not even say something, but just like just notice it and kind of go, oh wait a minute, why is she looking at that? Like, yeah, that's very specific, very very specific.
She must think she's been made.
Yeah. So also the scene ends with a snowman who's been sitting next to them stands up and says condolences and walks off.
I'm not gonna lie, all scene I was expecting that there's someone sinister inside that suit, and he's just overheard everything they've said.
Nah, it just seems like a nice dude who overheard this intense conversation, most of which was about Darlene wanting to go to the bank and see what's in this box. Elliot thinks there's no point, and it becomes clear throughout the scene that this is really about her wanting him to be there more than it is about the box itself. At least I was getting that vibe quite early on, and she really has to say, "Please just come with me." And she's almost begging at one point. So we come back to them obviously later. Dom then is in an interrogation, not her interrogation. We've had that. This is now her just co-piloting with another agent, talking to this Irish criminal smuggler dude who makes people disappear, but not in like a traditional we make people we want to die in a way that he makes other criminals have new lives somewhere else off the grid or new aliases, that kind of thing.
Fresh start.
Yeah, the Breaking Bad disappear, I suppose. I'll put it that way. But the main part of this scene though is that she gets a message from Janice saying sorry about Agent Horton, and then another guy comes in the room and says, "Oh, did you hear?" And we find out that he, quote unquote, has committed suicide by jumping off his building. And there's a
99.9% isn't good enough.
Yeah, let's strive for 100 with the 100 emoji. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of doing exactly what you thought it was going to do, but I think what makes it work in a sense of like, oh, we knew she was going to go after him, or maybe not her herself, but like the Dark Army were going to go after him. I think the reason why this still works and never feels any less than completely engaging is the tone of which Janice delivers this.
It's the off-kilter, kind of cheery encouragement of it.
Yes. So Dom has once again. I don't think we see her again for the rest of this episode. No, we don't. I think this is just further cementing her in here, and I think she is also going to have a reason to fight. Like, she might come later in the story in terms of when she finally kind of takes up arms with Elliot and Darlene and everyone else. But
I'm sure there will be a moment.
Yeah, she's going to want to fight, probably reluctantly. She hates Darlene's guts for all the reasons of last season.
Yeah,
but
bigger issues.
So they were at the bank, and they get the news that the box stopped being paid for a couple of years ago, and it's company policy to give 120 days for people to maybe show up and collect their goods.
Period.
Yeah, but that didn't happen, so it was all tossed. So it's kind of this unfulfilling lack of answers. But I think what's beautiful about this is that it just reveals that that's not really what Darlene was looking for. This was all about Elliot and trying to connect with him.
She's kind of freaking out, shouting at the guy there, who's just like, it's policy. What do you want me to do?
He's all scared, and it becomes very clear as well that this is not about Mum, because they're both in pretty much unison here about how they feel about their mother and how awful she was. This is about Angela. This is about dealing with Angela's death. And how obviously she's been having a hard time. Like, she was delirious and thought she'd seen her like the previous day. And hell, there's still room for that to turn out to be true. And she just thinks she was delirious and whatnot.
Yep.
We're saving that, keeping that open. That door's staying open. But it's about Angela, and she says to Elliot, like, how have you moved on already? And he's like, I've not. And I think it's been clear to us that all this fighting, that everything he's doing to take down White Rose, like, yeah, it could be passed off as he's just trying to save himself. He's trying to save himself and Darlene. But I feel like it's really about Angela. Like, the real,
definitely,
the driving motivation right now is to avenge Angela. And yeah, so I liked all that stuff. I think I love the tone of this scene. Obviously, it's shot mostly from behind. Once they're sitting down next to each other and having this honest conversation, we have the reverse shot of like just looking kind of slightly to an angle over each other's shoulders. But a lot of it is this two shot that starts off very wide. It gets more in close as the scene goes on. But what I like about this is the entire time, once he's sitting down, is that there's this Christmas song playing. There's like Christmas music playing, and it kind of frames it with this kind of like family cheery time of year kind of mood.
Family time is traditionally what is associated with Christmas, and this is a very broken family.
Yeah, so it really nails kind of this mood in this moment, and then we find out about the tape because Elliot says get the Walkman out, and he shows her what was in it, and it just says Happy Mother's Day, which means nothing to us, yet, and. He's like, do you remember this tape? And she's like, yeah, that wasn't for her though. How did she get it? It's like, I don't know. Maybe she just wanted it to be for her. And obviously I'm like, okay, we're going to get to hear it. Come on, what's on the tape? What's on the tape? And sure. And Ellie doesn't want to listen to it first, but he does then kind of rescind and leans in and listens to it as well.
Kind of at Darlene's insistence.
Yeah. Because he's adamant he's not going to it first, and then he does it anyway. And we hear it's a Mother's Day tape that they made for Angela's mum. And what's beautiful about this is that we see Happy Mother's Day, and it's hard not to at least think on some level. So this is about their mother, right? But it's not. There's
an obvious assumption to that, yeah.
But this tape is about Angela, and this is something that means something to them because of their friendship with Angela. And we hear the three of them making this message as kids, like, and it's all for Angela's mum. Like, presumably they made nothing for their mum. But they
actually
Angela.
Call her mum as well. Like, they don't, I think after all they say, Mrs. Moss, but they do call her mum as well at first.
And it reiterates how close these three were growing up. Because it's something that was kept secret from us for like a lot of season one, and then we kind of got filtered in after that, like about what this past was like, and this really kind of like hit it right. And I loved it because if anyone had a complaint last season about Joanna being killed early, I feel like, first of all, I never felt the same way about Angela because it felt like the conclusion to her story. It felt natural. But everything in these two episodes so far has been spiraling. The motivations have all come from her. I
actually think that's the, last episode we were discussing how, if you'd put that scene at the end of last season, would there be any complaints? Would it really be any different? I've actually come to the conclusion, yes, it would be different. because I think putting it at the start of this season frames it as the driving force for everything that happens afterwards. Whereas at the
Sure.
end of last season, it's a capper. Whereas here, no, this is the start of everything for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I still think you can use it as a driving force, even if it's from the finale.
You can,
I mean,
you can, but I think it's a more clear statement of that being at the start versus being at the end.
yeah. So no, I thought it was a really wonderful scene. It was a kind of a touching scene, which we don't necessarily get. We do actually. We get a fair amount of touching scenes of Mr. Robot. It's just surrounded by so much misery. But the touching scenes really stick out, and I feel like this one did. So, and then we get one of the perhaps the most fascinating scenes in the episode, which is Zhang. We finally see him. He's putting up his Christmas tree. Well, he's putting up. He's decorating his Christmas tree. It's already
It's
up.
a very big Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's like 12 foot tall. It's a huge thing, 15 foot maybe. Philip comes in and he's like, "Oh, it's what was the word he used? Unbalanced. You're unbalanced to the left." And he's like, "Oh, the tree. Oh, to the left. You're quite right, Philip." And this kind of. So what I loved about this, I love how this scene was shot. This was one of the scenes where I really was paying attention to the camera work. Zhang, for a lot of this scene, is either in a very, very wide shot, and even when he's in a little bit closer when he's decorating the tree, it's still a fairly wide shot. It's still kind of his full body.
And I mean, you need a fairly wide shot to get most of that tree in.
Yes, that's true. But he's very much at a distance, and the moment where Price kind of tells him about he wants to resign and he's going to move on, and he's doing it by the end of the year. So keep in mind this is right before Christmas, so in the next week or so.
Yeah.
This is which, and as we know from the start of the episode, Elliot needs them all in a room within 8 days, right? And
this is his ploy.
And that's his play to make that happen. But what I love about this, because when Elliot said that earlier on, and Price said, "Do you think I can just request that all these world leaders can be in a room at the same time? You think I have that power?" And I believed him that this was a ridiculous request. This is the one thing that's believable, that he can force their hands by this because they have to make a decision. Because this wasn't him asking them to do it. This was him he knows that playing this card will result in that meeting.
That'll be the consequence of what they have to do to react to it.
So I liked this. It felt very believable. This was a way he could get it done.
Because at the start when he's saying, "I can't do that," yeah, I felt a little bit of sympathy for him there, because it was quite a big ask, right?
Well, that's the other thing I love about this scene, is that he gets to Zhang, because Zhang has so much power. We've seen him have power throughout. Remember last season when he says, "Oh, I had to ask twice." That scene. That's how much power Zhang has. What I love about this scene is that the second Philip just decides that and I'm using this wording very specifically here, he decides he just doesn't want to play the game anymore, Zhang has no power anymore. And he feels powerless, and he ends up, pulling down his tree in a fit of rage, because ultimately, maybe he can kill Price immediately after this because he's pissed him off, and he probably will and can, but it doesn't change the fact that Price has stopped caring, and Price doesn't care that if he's going to die. Price doesn't care that he's losing, because as he says, you just called it a game, Zhang, and that's the difference between you and me. But hey, if it is a game, you just won, so be happy. But
that's it. If he's not playing, if he's not scared of the threat anymore, then what are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, and of course this is throwing a wrench into Zhang's plan, because he wants to ship his project out of the Congo, and that's happening within the next week. Which is why, because he's like, "No, you're waiting because my project's not done yet."
It's Price, 8 days.
Yeah, and Price defiantly says, "Here's the thing, I don't care," which is probably something that he's never said to him before. He's never said to Zhang.
That's the most ballsy he's ever been.
Yeah, and you feel, and I actually want to compliment the show here. Not that Price is a squeaky clean character by any means, not that he can't still be evil, but I never thought I'd find myself in a scene like this rooting for Price, because of what he's fighting for, because he's fighting for Angela. And likewise, when he phones Elliot at the start of the next scene, and Elliot says thank you, he's like, "I'm not doing this for you," and it's clear who he's doing it for. So I really like that. One of the shots I want to point out though is when he does say what he's going to do, that he's going to resign, and then defiantly says, "No, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care if it's a problem." Zhang walks forward to him, and he comes closer to the camera, and that's a pretty imposing shot in itself. But what I really liked about it is the reverse shot of Price, where the shot of Price just starts to kind of like crab around him, and it feels like the camera is just rotating around Price as Zhang gets closer, and his eye line's changing. It felt really like you've pissed him off enough that he's coming to talk to you.
He's inside the personal space now.
Yeah. But it was a really nice build up in the scene. The movement really sold the impending sort of like doom of Zhang coming towards him.
Yeah, the direction on this show is just next level, isn't it?
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. That's my next page. Page 3.
Oh boy.
It's the last page. I mean, we only really have
Couple
two
of scenes
scenes.
left.
We have 2 scenes left. So we're back in the church. We're back because they're picking up the ashes and whatever. Elliot's on his own on the phone, as we said. And Darlene comes in, and essentially, in trying to open up and get him to talk about who he was on the phone with and that kind of thing, she then brings up Jacobs. She's like, "Hey, why were you looking into Jacobs? Like, I saw her on your phone. Why are you looking into her?" And ultimately confesses. And of course, I can't go any further in this scene without talking about the fact that behind Elliot for a lot of this scene, in multiple parts of the scene, depending on where he is, there's a giant cross that's got a light on it, like behind him.
Yeah, it's maybe the some of the least subtle work this show has done.
And I think that's kind of the point. I think the point is at this point we're not being subtle. Like,
I mean, it's about redemption at this point.
Yeah. So I love it. I actually, my favorite part actually though is when he sits down with Darlene and he actually tells her what the plan is. When he eventually says, "I'm going after White Rose," some really good music comes in at that point.
Oh, it's so good.
Right, but that's also when the cross is right behind him. It really feels biblical, like he's going after White Rose. He's going to take down the giant, and Darlene realizes that, hey, wait a minute, like it's not just you that she's going to come after; it's me as well. And there's like a pause, and she goes, "I'm in." And it's like, yeah, we're getting F Society back together, baby.
Yeah. And Elliot's like, no chance. You can't be doing this. And she's having none of it.
Yeah, she puts a thing on his phone so that he can always track her in case he's worried about her, kind of thing. And that's obviously one of some of the things we've glossed over is Darlene like sort of explaining that she killed her. And, you know, it's right before he actually admits what his plan is that he sits down and says, okay, I looked into her. I know what she did. I know what she was involved with the township plan and so on. But yeah, there is this moment where he's like, "What have you done?" And she's like, looks kind of ashamed, like, you know.
Yeah, but then she comes clean and kind of admits it, and it's like, but I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to judge me over it too much.
I think, you know, as much as we never really thought about this at the time, and it's insane that was like episode 2 or 3 of season 2, like that was like ages ago now. Is that's kind of given Darlene something very specifically to redeem for. I mean, also how she treated Dom last season, but I think this obviously is the big line that she crossed at one point. Yeah.
I think it's kind of a little bit better in hindsight now that, okay, well, she was Dark Army and kind of, she was this contact. She was so important. It makes it not quite as evil, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it was still sinister the way she did it. She did it in cold blood.
It was. Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. Yeah.
So she's got redemption to fight for, and the fact that she's ashamed to tell Elliot knows that she feels it. She feels guilty about what she did, even though in the moment it was kind of how she acted. So, but yeah, and then we get to maybe some more interesting stuff though.
Oh, this is the most interesting.
Because we were talking about obviously how Vera was at the end of season 3, was the post-credit scene, and you know, and Darlene says, "Hey, like I know, you know, I realized you were up to something, but I assumed it was to do with Vera." And Elliot's like, "Vera? What's he have to do with that?" And he's like, "Well, you know, he showed up a couple of months ago, and like I noticed as soon as the name came up, the music kind of intensified. It got like a lot darker.
It did. It got that suspense, tension stuff going."
And she's like, "But when I told you about him, you sort of said, hey, you know, no big deal, nothing to worry about.
Don't worry about it." Yeah.
And my favorite thing here is that the camera just pans behind Darlene to Mr. Robot sat there, and we're thinking the same thing.
And Elliot's there going, "God damn it! Why didn't he tell me?"
Yeah, we're thinking the same thing he is that Mr. Robot had this conversation with Darlene and has not told Elliot, and Elliot has no idea that Vera's back in the picture. But of course, the big thing here so Elliot basically says to Darlene, "Go along, I'll be there in a minute." And that's exciting for us because we're like, oh, it's because he wants a chat with Mr. Robot. Like, it makes no sense to Darlene, but to us it makes complete sense. He wants to have a private conversation. And he gets angry at him, and Robot's like, no. Like, I don't have no idea. And it takes like a minute to convince him, but he's like, I promise you, I did not have that conversation. And it's when it says that sentence, I was not the one who had that conversation, that I sit up and go,
hold on a second.
Wait a minute now. And you know, Elliot says the exact thing. He's like, wait, if I didn't have that conversation and you didn't have that conversation, then who had that conversation with Darlene?
Oh boy.
Oh, so good.
There's a rogue element.
There's a third personality, and this is something that we've been joking about or theorizing about since like early season 2, is that there might be a third one.
I've been thinking for a while that we were the third one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we didn't have this conversation. We saw Vera, don't get me wrong. So if they want to play it at that angle, I can buy it. But we didn't see the actual conversation.
But at face value, yes, if this third personality had a conversation with Darlene, then it has to be something in the show. And the next scene, of course, which is probably the most David Lynch trippy, what is going on scene the entire show's ever had.
Yeah.
Suggests there is a third personality. In fact, I noted down the sound effect here as it transitions from this scene, it's a suspense of like who was it, and you have this like metallic like sound that I don't even know how to describe it. And when you eventually see what it is, it's basically the spinning of a swivel chair, like the one I'm sitting in, but like turned up and like intensified to like this ridiculous degree.
It's got this creak to it. It's like it's not smooth.
It sounds like something you'd hear maybe in like a steel factory or something.
It is, yeah. No, what it is the two, because obviously on your swivel chair, it's a circular bit, inside the outer bit. It's the two bits kind of grating together as it spins.
Yeah, but it's intensified that it sounds like you're going past like the steel mill in the Terminator 2 or something like that. And it goes to the city and then it goes into this, and it's a very similar like boardroom. Remember way back at the start of the show, the 1% of the 1%. It was that kind of boardroom.
It was. I wouldn't be surprised to see if it was like almost exactly the same.
Probably,
if
yeah.
you went back and checked.
But this is a young Elliot, I think, right?
That was my assumption too.
I don't remember what young kid Elliot looked like from the flashbacks way back when. Someone can confirm in the comments for us if this is definitely. I mean, that said, though, it's been a few years since that season. Maybe they had to get a new actor anyway, because he'd have grown up too much. But he's swiveling in the chair, and then in walks Elliot's mother. And you're like, is this a flashback? What's going on here? What are we doing? What's happening?
Yeah.
And
she's like, that's not your chair.
Yeah, it's not your chair. You can't do this shit. We have to wait. And he says, she says we have to wait for him. And he's like, Elliot? Is it, no, Mr. Robot? No, the other him. And then he just gets up, she takes his hand, and they walk through the door, and it just slowly shuts, and then we cut to credits. So this is like some weird in his head stuff. It's the best I could describe it at this point.
Yeah, this is strange, but I agree. Okay, this is some section of his subconscious.
Because it immediately dispelled the first idea I might have had, which is that the third one was his mother, right? Because if one's his father, it made,
Sure. Yeah, no, there's an obvious thing to that.
There was a logic, but because she's there saying no, it's the other him. Like, it's okay. It's definitely saying to me, it's not her. It's something else.
It's someone else. Yeah. I mean.
And the fact that there's young Elliot in here also says to me that even Elliot that we know isn't, like, him and Mr. Robot are both parts, they're all splinters of what Elliot used to be as a kid. The idea that Elliot as a kid splintered into these different personalities, even though the other one's based on his dad, it's still very much the what the kid saw his dad as kind of thing. It's that side of him. So, what is the third one?
Could be a version of Tyrell. We haven't seen much of him.
Maybe. I feel like I don't think it's gonna be Tyrell though.
I mean, I don't really. It's the only thing that kind of springs to mind at first.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the third one's, but still kind of born from his mother. Like let's say it's a more sinister, evil one, right? Does it? Even though it's not his mother, literally, like, did it come from that side of him?
The only thing that maybe makes me question it is she said the other him, which makes me assume it's still a male personality. Well,
that's what I'm saying, though. It's still like a version of Elliot, but it's like based. It's the evil came from her. Okay. It's her influence.
That's possible.
Maybe the reason why it doesn't take his mother's form is because he was close with his father. He liked his father. So yeah, whereas his mother he hated. So that's why. But it is worth mentioning, we have talked about this before. I remember distinctly at the end of season 2, I think it was, talking about how it sounded like in the past there was a third personality. There was a hint.
There was, yeah.
When he was talking to Angela on the train, I remember it fairly well.
No, I do. I remember discussing how, because we talked about his breaks in the past. That had been an element in the show.
Yeah.
But it didn't sound like it was always Mr. Robot, not like this.
Yeah, it sounded like there'd been something else in the past, if not all three at one time. And it sounded like he didn't remember previous versions, when he'd had his previous break, because we'd heard about Darlene and Angela having to go and find them before, before season 1 even, pre the show's history.
Exactly.
So I'm so excited to be digging into that stuff and kind of hitting at it. And this weird, like, last scene that was like,
it completely threw what I expect out of the show, just out the window, right? It's like it introduced, okay, this is a whole new concept we can play with, even in this show that has been very weird and has done some pretty extreme meta ideas, like the sitcom in in Elliot's head. This was like something he's not even aware of.
Yeah.
It's totally different.
Who's the third man? That's the question now.
I hope that by the time it's revealed, I hope we can go back through seasons, or at least this season, and see him at points. Like, okay,
maybe.
it's just in the background of scenes, he was there, but we didn't know it was him.
Oh, I don't know if we'll literally get that visual, but like I'm wondering if there's
No. I don't need them to show us it, but like on a rewatch, he was there.
No, I'm not saying. No, I don't even need that visual in hindsight. I mean, like I don't
need it. I would like it.
But maybe more interesting to me would just be like parts of Elliot's personality. Like, is there moments you can go back, watch his performance, and go, no, that scene was this third character. It wasn't actually the Elliot we know.
Possibly, yeah.
I wonder if there's maybe like an element of that that's going to creep in. I don't know. It is fascinating though, and I'm super excited to dive into more of this over the next 11 episodes, which is what we've got left.
Yeah. Although you're doing the next one on your own, aren't you?
I am, yes. Connor's on vacation next week, so I'll have my notes. I'll be doing it on my own next week, and we'll fire through it and see what happens. And then Carl will be back presumably for episode 4. So
yes, I'll be watching both. Well, I'll be watching the third one as soon as I get back, and 4 like the day after.
Yes. So that is the plan. So thank you very much for joining us. Let us know what you thought of the episode and your theories as to who this third personality, this third Elliot is, and everything else that was on the show. Which is a fantastic episode. I thought it was even better than the first episode. It maybe didn't quite have, like, the Angela death scene was so well executed, no pun intended, that I don't know if this had any specific scenes that topped that for me, but I think as a whole this episode was even stronger.
I feel like it was less flashy but more consistent.
Yes. The emotional beats were hitting hard throughout.
I will say, I think this rose to the end, where you got to the end, you were like, what the hell is going on? Whereas last episode opened with it, and as good as the rest of the episode was, never quite matched the opening.
And this episode was about unifying Darlene and Elliot, as well as obviously a subplot about Dom's sort of situation. But that was the two main things that were going on here. And I think it handled those very, very well, especially Darlene and Elliot. I love that stuff. So, so let us know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. You can, of course, ding the bell to make sure you get notifications on YouTube. You can support us by rating the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever. 5 stars helps more people find us, helps spread the show a little bit. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and you get bonuses, exclusives, deleted like tangent conversations that we have, and all sorts of things. Plus, there's more at the higher tiers, so go and have a look and see if you're interested. Otherwise, get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates, and look out for other TV reviews and movie review podcasts and all the other stuff we do. There's a horror movie podcast that's going every single day right now because it's October, but I'll be back to its usual one per week come November. That's called Streams After Midnight, so check out that. But otherwise, that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla? Oh, and goodbye, friend.